Matt Harmon here with Liz Loza. We're talking about a fun topic here at the end of this decade. Who are the top fantasy busts? And we've got a host of running backs here who let us down. I'll start with nominating C.J. Spiller.
It's a good one.
The Buffalo Bills, the 2013 season. We remember he was like a first-round pick after that huge finish to 2012. And then, of course, the famous line
From Nathaniel Hackett.
He said he's going to give him the ball till he puked. Well,
He actually said it's really simple. Like, obviously,
so
we're going to
simple.
give him the ball till he throws up. And what did he end up doing, Matt? He threw up where?
all over your fantasy lineup, Liz Loza. And the worst part about C.J. Spiller, too, is like that 2013 season, he actually stayed healthy the entire year and still finished like sub running back 25, which is the worst kind of bust because you still want to use him every single week. It's like, he's out there.
Yeah.
But
He
gross.
was the satellite back who couldn't get a reception, if you will.
Absolutely terrific. So let's go with your next one, a famous first round bust.
Absolutely. Let's talk about Trent Richardson. Most recently, his career was resurrected by the AAF.
Oh, yeah, he was like, he was scoring. Hey, he did not bust if you picked him in your AAF fantasy league.
Absolutely.
Guy was scoring like a 1-yard touchdown every single second.
I actually reached out to Instagram, and he was overwhelmingly the choice as the biggest bust of the past 10 years.
Yeah.
Cleveland first-round pick. I mean, the Browns and those first-round picks, we know how it goes, not just at the quarterback position.
They traded up a spot to make sure they got to jump the Vikings, who had Adrian Peterson, stupid Browns. Like, unbelievable.
And then you think they'd not be outdone, but oh wait, Ryan Grigson and the Colts did in fact outdo them.
Yeah, I wonder why Andrew Luck retired early when he had to play most of his career with the GM who would trade a first-round pick for Trent Richardson when everyone knew he was bad. So that was a mess.
So another running back that Instagram overwhelmingly decided was a bust was Ryan Matthews.
I forgot about this
Oh my
one.
goodness, there was so much potential there, but the injury imp definitely bit him hard. He could not stay healthy, whether he was in San Diego at the time with the Chargers or at the end of his career with the Eagles. Remember that moment of optimism? We all thought,
He was going to be
it's
Chip
gonna
Kelly's
be that.
guy.
Right. And indeed, it did not ever happen.
No, and one more while we're on the subject of injured backs, because on the flip side from C.J. Spiller, and Trent Richardson, those guys that would stay healthy and you just felt like you had to use them. Darren McFadden, 2013, he was a top 8 pick in most fantasy drafts and then just went out and completely busted. Not only did he miss some games that season, but after showing like over 5 yards per carry in the prior season, that big explosive ability that made him like, by the way, it's like 4th overall pick by the Raiders in his draft class. He comes out that season, he averages under 3.5 yards per carry, just a total bust.
He did get a little bit of love from Jerry Jones and their Arkansas connection to end his career in Dallas, despite breaking his elbow after dropping his cell phone, I believe.
That is right. He did drop his cell phone and broke his arm. But you're right. There was redemption for Darren McFadden. And if you had a bad fantasy season this decade, to end this decade, we hope that there's some redemption for you in 2020 and you don't end up sitting on any of the other landmines that will come at the running back position. Matt Harmon here with Liz Loza to do some very responsible, way too early, bold predictions.
Matt, don't lie to the people. We've been drinking mimosas all afternoon and morning. I mean, it feels like the afternoon, even though it's still the morning, because we are gonna get optimistic.
Yeah, gonna get wild, a little optimistic. Why don't you give me yours first?
So this is a bold prediction I have for 2020, and it is around Devin Singletary, who by next year will be in his second year because I believe he will be a top 5, I didn't stutter, fantasy football running back. I know, you're going to tell me, but Liz, he's not seeing any touches within the 5 or 10-yard line. Josh Allen's getting all those looks. Old man Frank Gore is getting all those looks. Yeah, but Devin Singletary has been an absolute workhorse for the Bills. Over the last few weeks of the season, he's seen Denver, that's a tough matchup, Dallas, Baltimore, Pittsburgh, going over almost 90 yards per contest. He is the future of the Bills organization with that mobile quarterback that can obviously create extra holes for the running back nicknamed Motor. Book it.
I like it. He's been elusive all season. He's been a great runner. And I'm going to stick with a great runner, but at a different position.
Whoa.
I think Kyler Murray is going to be next year's Lamar Jackson. Top 3, let's say top 3 fantasy quarterback for Kyler Murray.
Don't back down.
And
Top three. Say it with a period, Matthew.
The reason is like you got to go top 3 because he's QB8 headed into this week, which is kind of surprising to most people. And I think that's why this is going to end up looking like a bold prediction because he's not going to get highly drafted, in my opinion. And most of it is because of the rushing, right? Like he's been 2 or 3 all year behind Lamar Jackson with Josh Allen in terms of quarterback rushing yards, but he hasn't put up incredible passing stats, under 7 yards per attempt, 17 touchdowns again headed into week 16. But I think next year, if this offense gets a little boost in talent, it is going to be
some receivers.
One of the best offenses in the NFL. Cliff Kingsbury, I think, has passed the test with flying colors in his first year, adjusting to different running backs
Using
while
some
always
tight ends out of nowhere.
Yeah, he wanted to run those 4 wide receiver sets and was smart enough to say, look, I don't have the guys to do it. He evolved, he changed, and they've made Kenyon Drake like one of the best-looking running backs in the league. I think if they inject some receiver talent into this offense in Arizona, Kyler Murray is going to fly because when you just watch, hashtag watch the tape, that guy can make some of the most impressive throws in the NFL. I think he will be the breakout star of the quarterback position.
Listen, as a member of Team Vertically Challenged, I am all for it. Let's see this happen in 2020. Those are our bold picks. Go ahead and tell us yours for 2020. Have a happy new year and an awesome next season.
The 2019 fantasy football season is officially over, and before the season, we had high hopes for certain players. Now, even though it didn't exactly play out like we thought for everyone, there is a chance they can redeem themselves next year. I'm Amanda Borges, and joining me here on set, we've got Andy Behrens and Tank Williams. So guys, give me a player, or maybe a couple players, who you think could bounce back in 2020.
I'm going to start with a guy that, we may have oversold just a tiny bit in his rookie season.
That.
No. When would we ever overhype a player? It's possible that we may have done that with David Montgomery. It hasn't exactly been the season that carries you to fantasy championships. He's been a pretty inefficient runner, less than 4 yards per carry. Maybe it wasn't everything that you thought you were signing up for. I guess the only thing I want to urge people here is to remain patient with him because it is very common throughout NFL history and recent NFL history for some very good running backs to not really show out as rookies. Christian McCaffrey, Joe Mixon, Melvin Gordon, these guys averaged less than 4 yards per carry in their rookie seasons. The game slows down. Montgomery is going to remain a centerpiece player for that Bears offense. He is going to be their primary workhorse back, and I think over time, he was such an elusive player at the collegiate level, I think that's going to pay off. And just so I can be right about somebody, I'm going to throw out there that A.J. Green is probably going to bounce back from his redshirt season. I think the fun thing about him is that you look at where he's going to be at next year, he's either going into free agency or he's going to be franchised. Either way, he's probably going to get a quarterback upgrade because he's going to be tied to either Joe Burrow or like a legit NFL starting quarterback and a great offense. He's not too old to be a fantasy factor. He's got 6,000-yard seasons on his resume. He's going to come back healthy, and he's going to be great.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Saquon Barkley. I mean, I know all of y'all going to go ahead and draft him early anyway, which you should, but a lot of people have gotten burned this year. And it's one of those things where, look at this. Golden Tate was suspended to start the season. Eli got benched. Then Saquon got hurt. Sterling Shepard got hurt. Evan Ingram got put on IR. Then Danny Dimes got hurt. I mean, so he's dealt with a lot of stuff. But one thing he's not dealing with, in the words of Yahoo Noise, he doesn't have an arthritic knee. So Saquon Barkley is going to come back. He balled out his rookie year on a terrible team. So even if they're terrible next year, he's going to have all that young talent around him. He's going to be healthy, and they're going to make a concerted effort to get this dude the ball in his hands. And so I think if anybody's going to bounce back, it's going to be Saquon Barkley. So don't be scared. Don't fall for the banana in the tailpipe. He will ball. So don't sleep on him.
I like the positivity. Here's to a productive 2020 for us all. I like that. We will have more fantasy advice for you leading up to your 2020 drafts. Just keep it locked right here on Yahoo Sports. All right, so we already looked back on the year, which means all that's left to do is look ahead, which I'm happy about because my fantasy year was pretty stinky. So, who will we want to draft first in 2020 and why? Everyone is weighing in on this one, and Matt, you can go first.
There you go.
Yeah, well, fine. I'll go with the safe pick here. It's Christian McCaffrey. You don't have to think too hard about this one. Not only was he great this year, there's a pretty good chance. I think at this point, the odds are more favorable that Cam Newton is back in Carolina as the starting quarterback. And that is good news for Christian McCaffrey. That is good news for the entire offense. Kyle Allen was total dust. I know that you could say, hey, look, he checked the ball down a lot. That inflated his volume. Cam Newton had no reservations about throwing a Christian McCaffrey McCaffrey before. I think if he's back, it'll be just fine. And regardless, I think overall, this is just the guy you can trust the most right now. He is the clear and obvious #1 pick.
All right, well, I'm gonna go against the grain just a little bit here. This person needs to be in the conversation, especially if it's a full PPR league, and it's Michael Thomas of the New Orleans Saints, a guy that I mentioned was my MVP this year. I mean, Christian McCaffrey is going to be the runaway #1 overall, but I mean, this guy is a king of consistency. Since week 4, he was inside the top 10 in 9 of 11 games. His floor is 115 catches. I know that Breeze, there's some uncertainty, when he's coming back and everything else, but still, as long as they're on the field together, him and Thomas, with that just incredible, unbreakable chemistry and bond that they have forged, he's a guy that, like I said, is going to get you at least 115 catches, probably going to be in the line of 1,300 to 1,500 receiving yards, and will probably be in the 8 to 12 TD range. So Thomas, after Christian McCaffrey, has to go #2, but take him at #1, it's not outlandish.
Liz, you're up.
All right. So Matt and probably more of my colleagues are 100% correct in picking Christian McCaffrey as the #1 overall pick in 2020. But for the sake of argument, can we give a round of applause to Nick Chubb, who has been maybe the only thing that has gone right for the Cleveland Browns as the, wait for it, Matt, engine in Cleveland's offense? I mean, despite being part of this dysfunctional mess, Chubb has still managed 22 opportunities per game, even with Kareem Hunt in the mix. He's averaging 5.2 yards per carry for the second consecutive season, and he's racked up the most rushing yards on the year, over 1,400, while also evading the most tackles, over 6 per game, behind one of the worst offensive lines in the league. He has dominated despite the dysfunction around him, and I think he definitely deserves at least top 3 consideration next year.
Nate, who's your pick?
I am going with a dark horse pick here. I like Dalvin Cook, and I know he's battled some injuries this year, and he had great production when he was healthy, obviously, even when he was banged up. But the reason that I like him is, well, several reasons. But first, I like that, over the years, it seems like a different guy sort of emerges in the season that just gets that high production week after week. It was Devontae Freeman a while ago, and then it was Todd Gurley for a couple years, and then Alvin Kamara, and we're bouncing around, and this year it's Christian McCaffrey, and it's tough to maintain that top spot. And I do think that in tow with that, defenses are going to adjust. They're going to play the Panthers differently. With Cam being back, maybe that's not such a good thing for Christian and total production. I know that's an outsider chance here, but that's my pick. That's who I like. I think Dalvin Cook is the guy. I think he's going to have a huge year next year and just continue to get better.
All right, Andy.
Yeah, honestly, I'd agree that Dalvin Cook is going to have a great year next year. I don't know how we're not picking Christian McCaffrey, though. We still have 2 games to go, and Christian McCaffrey is over 2,100 yards from scrimmage. He's averaging over 150 scrimmage yards per week. Leads the NFL in total yards, leads the NFL in touchdowns. It is really difficult for me to veer in any other direction. I'm still scarred by the 2016 Rose Bowl from this kid. He's great. He's my top overall pick. I don't see how it's anybody else.
Ravens quarterback Lamar Jackson was the player to watch this season and will likely win MVP in 2019. Now, if you had him on your fantasy roster, congrats. But for the rest of us, there's always next year, which brings us to the question of when we should draft him in 2020. So to help break it down, we've got Andy Behrens and Tank Williams. Guys, is there an easy answer here?
Well, this guy called his shot, so I'm going to let you go ahead and talk first.
Okay, Andy.
I will say Lamar was my sort of bold prediction to be the QB1 this year, and obviously that worked well, right? But I don't think anybody predicted the kind of season he's had.
Right.
Entering week 16, already 7 different weeks in which he'd scored 30 standard fantasy points. It's absolutely ridiculous. Obviously, he's rushed for over 1,100 yards, leads the NFL in passing touchdowns. It's really easy to build a case that he should be the #1 overall pick in fantasy. He is surely, as a practical matter, he's going to be a top 5 pick in every draft.
Right.
That's definitely happening. Somebody in every league is going to be like, yeah, I'm pulling the trigger. It's not historically the way you want to draft. I mean, we can go all the way back to there was a year when Cordell Stewart made sense to some people as the #1 pick. There was obviously the Mike Vick year. There was an Andrew Luck year. There was Brady. There was Manning. It's never worked out when we take a QB #1 overall. It has literally never worked out in the history of fantasy football. So he's got that working against him. The idea generally is you want to go find the next Lamar Jackson. You want to find that next guy who's going to blow up. That might be Kyler Murray. That might be, maybe Jameis Winston has another 5,000-yard season. There's such high replacement value at this position that it has always been difficult to take a quarterback number one.
Okay,
Right.
so where would you take him?
That's the thing. I mean, you see guys who, like I played in a 2-quarterback league, and the guy took Patrick Mahomes with the first pick overall this year. You had a lot of folks where it seemed like Patrick Mahomes was going like at the top of the second round. And you can make a case for Lamar, as Andy was saying, because if you look at his stats through this part of the season, like he's averaging 80 yards and a half touchdown, which gives you basically a 10-point floor just on his rushing alone.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that's something that you really look for when we talk about Christian McCaffrey and all these other really good players at the running back. Michael Thomas at the wide receiver position, he gets so much volume and targets. That's why he has a safe floor. Lamar has the safest floor of any player in fantasy football because of what he can do with his legs. And he has a lot of young talent around him, so he still should be pretty efficient and effective in the pass game. So for me, if I have to pull the trigger on him and you really want to get him, more than likely, like Andy's saying, someone's going to probably pull the trigger in the first round. So if you really want Lamar, you may have to do that. But I can say that his average selection area will probably be around the second round.
Yeah, he's definitely going to be my QB1, but I'm going to slot him in like the third round where I'm just never, ever going to get him because, again, somebody's always going to do it. And I can make sense of it. He is the RB14 right now. Like just off of his rushing stats, he would be a really solid RB2. Oh, and on top of that, he's thrown 30 touchdown passes. It's just a ridiculous fantasy season. He's going to be not a value, but he's clearly going to be a top 5 fantasy quarterback as long as he's healthy.
Yeah, so basically we didn't help you because he should get drafted around the third round, but basically you just have to make sure you pick him before the next person that wants him more.
Yeah.
So
That's the name of the
be in the
game.
first round.
And luckily, we still have some time before we get to draft in 2020 at all. So until then, we'll just keep watching the wonder of Lamar Jackson. For more on him and others, keep it locked right here on Yahoo Sports.